Welcome to this presentation of Working with Charts and Graphs. My name is Philip Wiest, and I will be your instructor. If you have questions about any of the information covered in this presentation, please use the question and comment box. In this lesson, you'll learn about how to work with charts and graphs in Crystal Reports 2008. Rather than feel as if you've got to take the data that's in Crystal Reports and shuttle it over to an Excel spreadsheet, you can actually take advantage of quite a number of charting features in Crystal Reports 2008 to make charts and graphs. You can create column charts. You can format those column charts to suit your needs. You can create pie charts. You can format them to suit your needs by doing things like exploding the slices and changing their colors and making it three-dimensional. You can also create other more inventive types of charts like the gauge chart to show your readers information that's in your report that is more clearly identified in a chart than it would be by just the numbers that are in the columns and in the rows. Let's take a look at some of these features. I'm back in Crystal Reports, and as usual, I'll build a report from scratch by choosing blank and then choosing my standard extreme database and then choosing the customer table together with the orders table. And when I click OK, I'll be in the linking window showing me that the two tables are linked to each other. And I'll click OK. And with the Field Explorer displayed, I can move fields from the customer and orders tables onto my report. For example, I'm going to grab the customer name column, and I'll place that on the report. I'll also place the order amount on the report and close up the Field Explorer window. Because what we'll see here are, when I click the Print Preview button, we will see the names of the customers and their order amounts. As you've also learned in this course, you can group this by the country, by choosing the country field, and then I'll click OK. As you've also seen, you can subtotal below each country by choosing the order amount column, and then by choosing sum. And when I choose to add this to all the group levels, you'll see beneath each of the different group levels, you'll see the sum. You've also learned to hide the details, and you've also learned how to move the value for the subtotal onto the same line that is the group header by just gracefully dragging it up there. Now we need not see the group footer either, so I'll hide that. Now, one of the other things we did in a lesson was to sort the groups. And so I'll use the Group Sorting Expert to only show the top 5 groups and group everyone together who is not in the type 5 groups into a group that's titled Others. Once I've got these 6 groups of mine and the grand total, we can begin to make a graph by choosing Insert and choosing Chart. Now, you see on my screen an orange rectangle that represents the chart. And so you'll click that chart in the report header so that the top of your report displays this column chart. Now, you don't have to stick with a column chart. You can always go to the Chart Expert tool after pressing the right mouse button on the chart and switching to a line chart and then clicking OK. But that doesn't look good. So you go back again and choose the Chart Expert. Maybe you'll choose a pie chart and click OK. Maybe that's something to your liking. But you see, you can always go back to that Chart Expert and shop around for the appropriate type of chart that will display your information in a fashion that makes it interesting for your readers. And so now you can see I've done so in a 3D type of column chart. But really this doesn't look appropriate given we've only got one series, not multiple series. So I'll go back and choose the Chart Expert and go back to the bar chart and click OK. And I'm back to where we were without too many clicks or too much gymnastics. Now, how do you format the chart once you've decided this might be the best one under the circumstances? Well, if you noticed when I pressed the right mouse button and chose Chart Expert, right in the Chart Expert is where you can choose to customize your chart. In effect, this is kind of like a wizard. Although these individual tabs that provide me with choices of changing the data and the axes and the options, etc., are available elsewhere, it's convenient that they're collected in one single place in the umbrella of the chart expert. Now, right now I'm displaying totals in my chart based upon the groupings. For every change of country, I want to show the sum of the order amount. And that's the only thing I actually have things grouped on, and the only summary that I'm including in the report. If I go to the Advanced button under Layout, this is where I can choose for every change of show a certain value, like last year's sales, or what you may find here. But in this case, I wanted to actually show the group totals that I've created on my chart, rather than individual fields. Now, if I look under Axes, this is where I can control the grid lines and the data values and the actual range on the vertical data axis. In other words, if I move the chart expert off to the side, you can see that they're referring here to the data axis. That's where the numbers are, and whether or not I'd like to control that range, its minimum and its maximum. I can also, on the data axis, control whether I'd like to have a certain number of logical divisions, break it up into different sections. And that's not true. I'm happy with the way it looks. Under Options, you can change the report to be one that's published in black and white. You can choose under Data Points whether you'd like to show or not show labels or values. Labels being on any one of these sections showing the actual name of the country. Or under Showing Values, actually showing the number that's represented by those heights of those columns. The other things you can customize are the background area of the chart, as well as the layout. But by default, the layout is automatically configured. And so if you want to manually configure it, you would uncheck that box, whether you do or don't want to show a legend. And if you notice on my report, I do have a legend, but it doesn't seem that necessary considering the fact that each one of those bars is labeled. So maybe I'll just uncheck the box for legend. And when I click OK, you'll notice that the legend is disappeared, but I do have the actual numeric values for the data showing on the chart itself. We have 259,000, 122,000, 71,000, etc. If I go back to that chart wizard, by the way, by pressing the right mouse button in that chart area, if I do so in the chart expert, you can see where I can also go and choose to highlight certain things. For example, if the country is equal to Argentina, I can make it a certain color. Or other things I can choose. If the sum of the order amount is greater than a certain value, I can actually make that bar a certain color based upon I guess you could call it a formula. If I wanted to, I'll choose text. And when I choose text, you can see I can change the title right here, and where I can type in top 5 countries. And if I want to have a subtitle, I can have plus others, because I've chosen to group all of the others in a section called others. And I can change the font for the title, the font for the subtitle, etc. If I wanted to change the group title, I don't think you need the word country there, actually. I think people will know that it's country. And in terms of the data title, I'll just type in the word total. And when I click OK, my chart now has that appearance. All of the bars are black, and the numbers are displayed on some of them above. On others, they would be right on top of the bars. Perhaps I should change the individual colors of some of these bars to make them more visible. If that's true, you press the right mouse button after selecting one of those bars and choose where it says Format Series Riser. Because here you could choose a different color for that riser to, I guess you could say, emphasize that riser. And if I choose to format that riser with a certain color, for example, I'll choose blue, and then I click OK, and then I go back and change my recipe for that chart expert under color highlighting to remove this, then the color that I've chosen will be displayed there the way I'd like it. But when you have a formula that's controlling the configuration of your chart, the results of that formula take precedence. Now, if I wanted to, I could make this chart a bit smaller by grabbing the edge of the chart and dragging it down to the lower left, and it makes it a bit smaller. If I wanted to position this slightly higher in that report header, I can do that too, because I wanted to make room to make a pie chart next to the column chart. And to do that, I'll simply choose Insert once more and choose a pie chart. And when I choose Chart and click to the right of the one that's there and select from the Chart Expert a pie chart and make it two-dimensional, I'll click OK. And now you see I've got myself a pie chart with a legend. And I can move that legend to the right to make it easier for people to see. I can even change the shape of that frame so that it fits on the printed page by moving it to the right and then making it a bit smaller. And now I've got my two charts side by side in the report. And if I select that second chart, I can choose Chart Options. If I choose Chart Options, this is where I can choose, again, data labels and show the values. And you can see them radiating from the side of the chart. I can choose the legend and maybe show that legend over on the right side to reposition it. I can control the titles. You don't have to use the Chart Expert for that. You can do it right here. So I'll type in the word Sum of Sales, and the subtitle will be by country. And then in terms of the appearance, again, if I'd like to explode the slices, I can explode the slices from one another. If I wish to rotate this in such a way to emphasize USA, I can control the rotation. I can also choose to display a different depth and adjust the tilt of this report as well. If I click OK, then the report has taken on the attributes that I've configured it with. If I still want that legend to be a little bit closer to the pie chart itself, I can move it. If I want the chart to be a little narrower, I can move that as well. But it's all predicated on the data that is stored in the report. If I refresh this report with new data, the pie chart and the column chart will change as well. These are the steps for working with these types of objects. In fact, if you've noticed, whether it's the chart on the left or the chart on the right, when I choose that chart, I can go to the Chart Expert, I can go to Chart Options, and I can go to Format Chart. Because again, in Format Chart, I may wish to put a border around the chart. And I can do that by choosing a color and then choosing the style of border that I'd like on the left, on the right, on the top, and on the bottom, all being single. And when I click OK, now you can see if I click away from that chart that it has a nice rectangle to identify it. I can even do the same thing with my pie chart by choosing, again, Format Chart and going under Border and adding a single line on all four sides of that chart. When I click OK, it too will have a frame around it, and it might enable me to better align it with the chart that's off on the left. So I can make those two charts side by side. Now, those are two examples of charts. If I make my report header a bit taller, I'll be able to squeeze in one more type of chart. And if I choose Insert Chart, I can click below the two charts that are there, and I'll get a third chart, which I can reconfigure with the expert to be a gauge chart. And under the gauge chart, when I choose that, I can see that it's going to represent the sum of the order amounts within each of the gauges that is created for each of the countries. And then I have a few choices here, again, for grid lines and data values. I have choices for options and for color highlighting, as well as for text. And I can even change the title to be Sum of Orders. And then in the subtitle area, I can put in by country and click OK. And when I do, I wind up with this. I wind up with a collection of gauges that, if I made a bit bigger, you'd be able to see represent the numbers that are in each of those different countries. Others, Spain, Canada, USA, Italy, Germany. And you can see the needles are pointing towards the number that each of those countries represents. If I wanted to format these gauges again, you'd press the right mouse button and choose Chart Options. And in terms of chart options, you can choose whether or not to have a beveled frame, the number of gauges per row. Maybe you want to have 3 gauges per row versus 2. Maybe you want to control the circular thickness of the perimeter. Maybe you want to also configure the stop angle to be not the value that it's initially set to be there. You can even choose the start angle as well and control that. In terms of titles, the title was inherited from the other dialog box. If you want to put some bands in for minimum and maximums, or change the legend, or the grid lines, or the axes, you can do that as well. If you'd like to show those axes on the chart, you can show the group axis or not. You can show the data axis or not. Maybe it's a little bit cleaner if we don't show the actual data value on these gauges. Because when I click OK, we're back looking at the gauges, and if I remove the legend by selecting it, and then choosing Format, and then choosing under Layout to remove the legend, you see that again it's a much cleaner looking chart where USA is off to the right and Germany is off to the left because the relative height or the relative lack of height of those values is reflected by the needle. That's an example of a gauge chart, and I think I may want to show the gauges more horizontally. So let's go back again to the chart options. Let's go back to the number of gauges to show in each row and change that to a 3, and then click OK. And now you've got, again, more of a gauge-related chart, a pie chart, and a column chart. In this lesson, you've been learning the different charting features that you can use, how charts work in Crystal Reports, how you group your data before you insert your chart, and then the chart will show the group totals. The main chart options, things like titles and legends and showing the data, are accessible to you through one of 3 different places, whether that be the chart wizard, the chart options, or the chart layout, depending upon the nature of the change you wish to make. To create a column chart, you simply select the Insert Chart option after having grouped the data, and then insert that chart probably in the report header. Vertical column charts from ranges of data in a report are what column charts display. Once you've got the chart on your screen, then you format that. You can even take the charts that you've created and export them to other programs. Here's an example. That pie chart of mine seems a little bit interesting, and if I'd like to copy this, I can select that chart and choose Copy. Once I've copied that chart, if I switch to Microsoft Word, for example, I can paste it. I'm in the Microsoft Word arena right now, having just copied a chart that I created in Crystal Reports. And when I choose Paste, I can choose to paste it or choose Paste Special, but whether I choose Paste or Paste Special, it's going to be a picture. And if I click OK, you can see the picture of the chart that I copied from inside of Crystal Reports. And it doesn't look bad at all. If I switch back to Crystal Reports once more, so if I highlight my gauge chart and choose Copy, I can take that chart and put it into Microsoft Word. Back in Microsoft Word, I'll just click the Paste button, and when I do, you'll see that elsewhere in my document, above the chart, is the gauge chart with the names of the countries and the needles pointing in the direction, coming right from Crystal Reports. If I'm back in Crystal Reports, I could export the entire report to Microsoft Excel. Let's take a look at that. When I'm in Crystal Reports and I choose Export, Export Report, I'll take that report and I'll export it not as a PDF file, not as an ODBC data table, but as an Excel 97 through 2003 file. And if I choose Application when I click OK, it will both export and open the file up in Microsoft Excel. I'll click OK, and you'll see that in Microsoft Excel is my Crystal report, complete with the two charts at the top, the gauge chart below, and even further down, I'll have the names and the numbers directly from Crystal Reports. That's how you create a column chart, format it, and even put it into another application. In this lesson, you've also learned how to create pie charts from group data and how to format a pie chart to show the data labels, to rearrange the legend, to change the colors of any given section, as well as how to display charts side by side, as I was displaying my column chart and pie chart side by side. And then we looked at gauge charts. What is a gauge chart? Well, it looks like a gauge. It looks like a dashboard on an automobile, and the needle that is displayed on the gauge reflects the value that the gauge is designed to show. You can format the gauge chart to show the data. You can format it to control the stop and the start value on the gauge. You can format the gauge chart to show 2 across or 3 across, depending upon what's valuable to your reader. But these are all examples of charts and graphs that can be generated from data that you've got in Crystal Reports. If you have questions or comments about the information covered in this presentation, please use the question and comment box. Thanks for joining me and learning about charts and graphs.